What's good, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today, the Utah Jazz continued their rebuild as they continue to tear down and just destroy the roster that they have spent years building now. And as we all expected, as I mentioned in my video that is, you can find right here just a few weeks ago, they needed to trade Bojan Bogdanovic, they needed to trade Jordan Clarkson, and they have done half of that problem. Obviously, this trade is an interesting one because they didn't get a lot back, and in my opinion, they probably could have got better value if they looked elsewhere. I'm talking about maybe, a Westbrook and a pick trade, because those Lakers picks, while they're good right now, their picks have potential to be extremely valuable going into the future, just because the Lakers have an old core. Most of their players are getting up there in age, or they have players like Anthony Davis who knows when they're actually going to be healthy. And if we're being honest, if LeBron leaves LA, chances are Anthony Davis is getting traded or going to leave LA as well. So at the end of the day, I think the Jazz missed out on a little bit of a better opportunity by not taking any other trades, but it's already done. So here we are, and today, just a few hours ago or about a day ago, the Utah Jazz made a trade with the Detroit Pistons, of all teams, a team that's also rebuilding still, a team that, you feel like they're right on the edge of being a contending or a playoff team, but don't think they quite are there just yet. But here we are, sending Kelly Olynyk and Saben Lee to Utah. In return, they get veteran forward, guard, whatever you want to play him as, Bojan Bogdanovic. And now I'm going to go ahead and talk about this for the Pistons' point of view too, because I don't really love this trade for either team. Bojan, he is not the greatest defender. He's not the most athletic guy or anything like that, but he is going to give you points. He's going to be able to score. He's consistently put up 18 points per game the last few years of his career. He is just a reliable offensive weapon, and he's also a veteran presence. So, he's been to the playoffs a whole lot. While he hasn't won a ton, he still brings that, experience and that value to a very young Detroit team. And, now they've really got a nice core of Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, Isaiah Stewart, Jalen Duren is a young guy that's there. They've got Marvin Bagley could still be really good. We don't know what's going to happen with him. Sadiq Bey is still there. They've got a really good young core. But then they bring in these guys like Bojan Bogdanovic or Nerlens Noel, guys that are good veterans, guys that could help make these young players better. Whether or not you make a playoff push or not, they are going to make your team better in the next few years just because of what experience they bring. And I think this approach is actually a really good approach by the Pistons, because with these veterans on the roster, if somehow, they shock the world, and I'm not going to say there's no chance they make a play-in appearance, but if we're talking like they make 6th seed or higher, they're in the playoffs, these guys are going to provide very valuable, a very valuable presence and experience that they wouldn't have from a guy like Kelly Olynyk or a guy like Saben Lee, who likely wasn't even going to be playing this year, just because you have Cunningham, Ivy, and Killian Hayes all trying to fight for those spots. And obviously, Cunningham and Ivy are the starters, but Hayes has continued to improve. Think he can still get there, so Saben Lee, this is probably best for him. He's going to go to Utah, a rebuilding team that can really give him an opportunity to shine if he wants to take that, if he wants to work on his game and improve. So at the end of the day, if I'm going to grade this for the Utah or for the Detroit Pistons, I give this probably a B+ to an A-. I'm not a huge fan of it because, like I said, there's a huge chance or a large chance that they don't even make a playoff push this year. But then there's also, on the other hand, the chance that, in the future, this helps out just because they can help get the young players, give them experience, teach them how, the playoff experience actually is, stuff like that. They can bring all of that veteran presence in, and I think that's why it's valuable for a rebuilding team to still keep a few older pieces on the roster. We've seen teams like the Thunder completely throw away any presence of a veteran player, and they have not been able to develop their guys much farther than when they got them, and that's probably why they've continued to be a bad team overall. And yeah, so an okay trade for the Pistons. I don't think it's terrible. I don't think it's the worst trade or the best trade ever, but you get rid of Kelly Olynyk, a guy who is another veteran, but doesn't quite get you that experience like Bogdanovic, and then you bring back and you give up Saben Lee, and you bring back a guy who can be an offensive weapon. He can be that spark plug when your offense is struggling, and he can also, sometimes he can win you games. This guy has been known for the Jazz to make big shots when they need him to, so a good trade for the Pistons, but as I slightly talked about at the beginning of the video, a terrible trade for the Utah Jazz. You're talking about a rebuilding team that has just completely deconstructed their roster. They just made a massive trade, two of them actually, with Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert because, obviously those guys weren't getting along. They wanted to kind of revamp the roster, and obviously you're not going to get the value out of Bojan Bogdanovic that you got out of Mitchell or Gobert because those guys are on a completely another level from Bogdanovic. But at the end of the day, you still want something good. You still want something potential-wise, whether it's a pick or a really good young player. And they just didn't get that in this trade. You bring in Kelly Olynyk, who, sure, he's going to take up a roster spot. He's going to, you're going to pay him a good bit of money on this roster, but you're not going to really care about him going into the future because he's likely, there's a very big chance that he either gets bought out or he gets flipped to another team. I always feel bad for Kelly Olynyk. It seems like he always ends up on a rebuilding or a edge of the playoffs or edge of the contending sphere team, but now he's on the Jazz, and he's probably going to get traded by the deadline or, get bought out earlier in the season, and we'll just have to see how that goes. But then you get Saben Lee, a guy who he's shown promise, sure, but he hasn't really shown that he can be a star or anything like that. And in my opinion, I would have much rather taken Kelly Olynyk and picks rather than Kelly Olynyk and Saben Lee, or maybe even just Saben Lee and picks. Let them keep Kelly Olynyk. Let them have another veteran player, another guy that can help lead their team when the young guys, ultimately, as they usually do, fall through and they're not able to get them to that next level. Unfortunately for the Jazz, though, and for Jazz fans, the rebuild was going really well. I was excited to see what they do with these final few pieces. You've still got Mike Conley and Jordan Clarkson, who are likely going to be moved as well, but now they just moved Bojan Bogdanovic in an interesting and odd trade, if I had to name it or title it of something. As for the Jazz, though, I would give this probably a C+. I mean, you still get Saben Lee. He's a young guy, but not a lot of value in return for one of your better offensive weapons. I thought Bojan Bogdanovic had a bigger market, and there's a big chance that sending him to the Lakers, you get Russell Westbrook, who's going to, as I always say in all of my videos where I talk about him, he's going to attract the media, he's going to attract fans, they're going to want to watch him play, and then you also get picks. And those picks, you have the Westbrook contract off your books next year, and those picks could have been very, very valuable going into the future. Unfortunately, the Jazz decided they didn't want those picks, they couldn't wait for those picks, and they pulled the trigger on this Kelly Olynyk trade. I'm not the biggest fan of it for them, but as always, if you guys enjoy this content, how are you feeling about this trade? Leave a comment down below. I want to hear what your guys' thoughts about this trade are for both sides. I mean, I think it's okay for the Pistons, and it's just a bad overall trade for the Jazz, but at the end of the day, they're rebuilding, so it's not like it's going to ruin their chance of contending. Thank you guys for watching my content. If you do enjoy, hit the like button and subscribe. Turn on post notifications so you never miss a video. I'll see you all next time. Peace.